She arrived before the sun. Every morning for 2 years, the same girl slipped into the throne room of Cindervale Castle while the world still slept. She swept the stone floors. She polished the armrests of the great obsidian throne. She cleared the ash from the fire pit and wiped the dust from the ancient banners. She never spoke. She never lingered. She was gone before the first servant stirred. Alpha King Aldrich of Velmore had walked past her 1,000 mornings. He had never once looked at her face, not until the morning she was no longer there. He stood in the doorway, dawn light bleeding through the frost-touched windows, and something felt wrong. The silence was different, emptier. The air held no trace of the faint lavender scent he had never consciously noticed, but now realized he had grown accustomed to. The throne gleamed as always, but the room felt hollow. She was gone. He did not know her name. He had never asked. And standing in that perfect, lifeless throne room, the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories found himself asking a question that made no sense. Why did her absence feel like a wound? The village of Brenmore sat 3 days' ride from Cindervale, tucked into a valley where the wind smelled of pine and the past could not reach. That was what Corenza told herself. She wiped down the tavern tables before the morning rush, hands cracked from cold water and lye soap. Different work. Same invisibility. The owner of the Grey Stag Tavern barely looked at her face either. She was beginning to think this was simply what she was, a ghost wearing skin. Her hands paused on the wood grain. She stared at nothing. 2 years. 730 mornings of walking those castle corridors before anyone else breathed. 730 mornings of standing 3 feet from the Alpha King while he reviewed documents or stared into dying fires, and he had never once turned his head. She had memorized him anyway, the way his jaw tightened when advisors delivered bad news, the way he rubbed his temple with 2 fingers when exhaustion crept too close. The scar that curved beneath his left ear, pale against the tan of his skin. The weariness in his green eyes that never fully faded. She had watched him carry an entire kingdom on his shoulders, and he had never known she existed. Corenza's throat tightened. She pushed the feeling down and kept wiping. It did not matter now. She was gone. She had to be gone. Lady Morvain had made that abundantly clear. You have 3 days to disappear. If I see your face in this castle again, you will hang for theft. Corenza had stolen nothing, but Lady Morvain did not need truth. She needed obedience, and Corenza had committed a far greater sin than theft. She had been seen, not by the king, never by the king, but by someone else. Someone small and silent and desperately in need of a friend. Tanzy. Corenza's hands stilled completely. Her chest ached in a way that made breathing difficult. Tanzy, 7 years old, mute since birth, the forgotten daughter of a kitchen maid who had died of fever 2 winters past. The child lived in the cracks of the castle, fed scraps, ignored by everyone, invisible in the same way Corenza was invisible. They had found each other the way shadows find shadows. Corenza had taught her letters by drawing in spilled flour. She had braided her hair with ribbons stolen from the laundry. She had held her during thunderstorms when no one else came. And now Corenza was 3 days' ride away, and Tanzy was alone in that cold stone labyrinth with no one who remembered she existed. The rag in Corenza's hand dripped onto the table. She had not had a choice. If she had stayed, Lady Morvain would have made good on her threat. And dead, Corenza could not protect anyone. But the logic felt thin, paper thin. A lie she told herself so she could keep breathing. The tavern door creaked open behind her. "Girl, firewood." The owner's voice, already bored. Corenza exhaled. "Yes, sir." She moved toward the back, but at the threshold she stopped, turned, looked east through the grimy window toward the mountains she could not see. "Hold on," she thought. "Please hold on, little one." She did not know if thoughts could travel, but she sent it anyway. Behind her, the tavern owner muttered about slow servants. Corenza did not hear him. She was still standing in a throne room that no longer wanted her, watching a king who had never seen her, wondering if she would ever stop feeling like a wound without a bandage. Aldrich had not slept well in 6 days. This was not unusual. The Alpha King of Velmore had not slept well in years, but this restlessness was different. It sat beneath his ribs like a stone he could not cough up. It followed him through council meetings and training sessions, and the endless parade of problems that came with ruling the largest territory in the north. He kept finding himself in the throne room, not for any reason. There was nothing there that required his attention, but his feet carried him back, again and again, and each time he stood in the doorway and felt that same hollow wrongness. She was gone. The cleaning girl. The ghost who arrived before dawn. He had asked the head housekeeper 3 days ago. Mara had blinked at him like he had spoken in tongues. The morning maid, Your Majesty? Yes. The one who cleaned the throne room. She is no longer employed here, sire. Lady Morvain dismissed her. Dismissed her. Why? Mara had gone pale. I would not know, Your Majesty. Lady Morvain handles the lower staff. Aldrich had let it go. He had meetings, borders to fortify, a treaty negotiation with the eastern clans. The departure of one servant should not occupy any space in his mind. And yet, he stood now in the corridor outside the great hall, rubbing his temple with 2 fingers, when he heard it. Crying, soft, muffled, coming from the alcove beneath the servants' staircase. Aldrich paused. He should summon someone, a maid, a nursemaid, whoever was responsible for crying children. He was the Alpha King. He did not handle crying children, but something pulled him forward anyway. He crouched at the alcove entrance and found a small figure curled against the stone wall. A girl, 7 years old, thin in a way that suggested meals were not regular. Dark hair tangled and unwashed, eyes red and swollen. She saw him and froze. For a long moment, neither of them moved. You are crying, Aldrich said. It came out more like an accusation than he intended. The child's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Her hands flew up, fingers moving in rapid patterns he did not recognize. She cannot speak, he realized. He had seen this child before. He was certain of it. Somewhere in the blur of castle life, this small face had passed through his peripheral vision. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head. Hungry? Another shake. Then her hands moved again, frantic, pleading. She pointed toward the east wing, then clutched her own chest, then made a sweeping motion like someone leaving. Aldrich did not understand, but he understood the grief in her face. It was too large for someone that small. Someone left, he said slowly. The child's face crumpled and fresh tears spilled. Aldrich felt something shift in his chest. An old instinct, rusty from disuse. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and placed his hand on her head. What is your name? She stared at him. Then, trembling, she traced a letter on her own palm. Tansy. Tanzy. He tested it. Who left you, Tanzy? Before she could answer, footsteps approached. Sharp and deliberate. Your Majesty. Lady Morvain's voice sliced through the corridor. You should not trouble yourself with servants' children. I will have someone collect her. Aldrich did not turn. Who is responsible for this child? A pause. Calculated. She is an orphan, sire. The kitchen staff feed her when they remember. She has no formal guardian. Aldrich looked at Tanzy. Tanzy looked at the floor. And who was caring for her before? Aldrich asked. She is grieving someone. Another pause. Longer this time. I would not know, Your Majesty. Aldrich turned then. His aunt stood at the corridor's edge, tall and elegant, her silver hair pinned in elaborate coils. Lady Morvain had raised him after his mother died. She had run this castle for 20 years. Nothing happened here without her knowledge. She was lying. Find out, Aldrich said. Morvain's lips thinned almost imperceptibly. Of course, Your Majesty. She turned and walked away. Behind Aldrich, Tanzy's small hand reached out and gripped the edge of his cloak. He looked down. She was staring at him with those swollen eyes, and in them he saw something he recognized. Hope. Fragile and terrified. The hope of someone who had been invisible their entire life and had just, for one impossible moment, been seen. Aldrich did not pull away. 3 days later, Aldrich found the drawing. He had given orders that Tanzy be fed properly and assigned a bed in the servants' quarters with an actual blanket. Small commands that should not have required a king's intervention, but apparently did. Morvain had complied without comment, but Aldrich caught the tightness in her expression, the controlled displeasure she thought she hid. He filed it away. This morning, he entered the throne room and found Tanzy sitting cross-legged in the corner with a piece of charcoal and a scrap of parchment. She looked up when he entered. Not with fear this time. Something closer to cautious familiarity. You should be eating breakfast, Aldrich said. Tanzy held up the parchment. He crossed the room and took it. The drawing was crude, rendered in the shaky hand of a child. But the subject was unmistakable. A girl, a broom. The throne room windows with dawn light streaming through. And the figure of a man sitting on the throne, face turned away. Aldrich's breath caught. The girl who cleaned, he said quietly. This is who you lost. Tanzy nodded vigorously. Her hands flew again, the silent language he still could not read, but her meaning was clear. She was mine. She took care of me. And now she is gone. Aldrich lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with the child's. What was her name? Tanzy traced on her palm. Kerensa. Corenza. The name landed in his chest like a key turning in a lock he had not known existed. Where did she go? Tanzy's face fell. She shook her head. She did not know. Why did she leave? The child hesitated. Then she pointed toward the east corridor, the direction of Lady Morvain's chambers. Aldrich went very still. He rose, walked to the door, summoned the first guard he saw. Bring me the head housekeeper, now. Mara arrived within minutes, nervous and out of breath. The girl who cleaned this throne room, Aldrich said. Corenza. Why was she dismissed? Mara's face went white. Your Majesty, Lady Morvain gave the order. I was not told the reason, only that she was to be removed immediately and barred from returning. Barred? Yes, sire. Under threat of... Mara swallowed. Under threat of hanging. For theft. Aldrich's jaw clenched. What did she steal? I do not know, Your Majesty. I saw no evidence of theft. She was a good worker. Quiet. Never caused trouble. Then why would my aunt threaten to hang her? Mara's silence was answer enough. Aldrich turned. Tanzy was watching him, her small hands clutching the drawing against her chest. Find her, Aldrich said. Mara blinked. Sire? The girl, Corenza. Send riders. Every village within 5 days' travel. Find her and bring her back. Your Majesty, Lady Morvain's orders were... I am the king. His voice did not rise, but it hardened into something that allowed no argument. My orders supersede hers. Find the girl. Mara bowed quickly and fled. Aldrich stood alone with Tanzy in the throne room. Dawnlight streamed through the windows, painting gold across the stone floor, the same light that had touched a girl he never looked at. The same light she had worked in, morning after morning, while he remained blind. Tanzy tugged at his cloak. He looked down. She pointed at the drawing. At the figure of the man on the throne, face turned away. Then she pointed at him. Then she drew her finger across the figure's face and turned it toward the girl with the broom. "Look at her," the gesture said. "This time, look at her." Aldrich exhaled slowly. "I will," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Lady Morvain appeared in the doorway. Her expression was perfectly composed, but her eyes flickered to Tanzy with something cold. "You summoned riders to find a dismissed servant," she said. "Not a question." "I did. May I ask why you concern yourself with such trivial matters?" Aldrich studied his aunt, the woman who had shaped his childhood, who had taught him that kings do not kneel to anyone, who had told him, again and again, that emotion was weakness and mercy was a blade turned inward. "You threatened to hang her," he said quietly. "For theft, she did not commit." Morvain's composure did not crack, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I do not know what the housekeeper told you, but I assure you." "Why did you want her gone?" Silence. "What are you protecting, Morvain?" His aunt's chin lifted, the faintest tremor in her jaw. "I am protecting you, nephew. As I have always done. That girl was a distraction you did not need. A nobody. A shadow. I removed her so you could focus on what matters." Aldrich felt the words land, felt them try to burrow in the way her words always had, finding the cracks, filling them with doubt. But this time, something resisted. He looked at Tanzy, at the drawing clutched in her small hands, at the picture of a girl with a broom and a man who never turned around. "You removed her," he said slowly, "because I was beginning to notice her." Morvain said nothing, and in that silence, Aldrich understood something that made his blood run cold. His aunt was not protecting him. She was controlling him. The riders found her on the 5th day. Corenza was hauling water from the well behind the gray stag when the horses appeared on the ridge, 3 of them, bearing the black and silver banners of Cindervale. Her stomach dropped through the frozen earth. She set down the bucket slowly, calculated the distance to the tree line, knew before she finished the thought that running was pointless. They had found her. Lady Morvain had found her. She would hang after all. The lead rider dismounted and approached. Young, stern. A soldier, not an executioner, though Corenza supposed one could become the other quickly enough. Corenza of Brenmore? She considered lying, but what would be the point? Yes. "By order of Alpha King Aldrich of Velmore, you are to return to Cindervale immediately." Corenza blinked. "The king?" "His Majesty has commanded your presence. You will come with us." "Not Lady Morvain? The king himself." The same king who had never looked at her face, who had walked past her 1,000 mornings without acknowledgement. That king had sent soldiers to retrieve her. Nothing made sense. "Am I under arrest?" The soldier hesitated. "No. But the king's summons is not a request." Corenza looked at the tavern, at the bucket of water slowly freezing at her feet, at the life she had tried to build from scraps. Then she thought of Tanzy. "I will come," she said. The journey back took 3 days. Corenza rode in silence, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, her mind churning through every possibility. Lady Morvain had lied to the king. That much was certain. But why would the king care about a dismissed servant? Why send riders? Why command her return? Unless Tanzy had done something, told someone, found a way to communicate what had happened. Corenza's pulse quickened. That brave, silent child. What had she risked? On the evening of the 3rd day, Cindervale appeared against the darkening sky. Black stone towers, silver banners. The castle that had been her home for 2 years and had never felt like home at all. The soldiers escorted her through the main gate, past the servants' entrance she had always used, and directly into the great hall. Corenza's breath caught. She had cleaned this room, swept these floors, polished these pillars. But she had never stood in it like this, never walked its length with her head up, her presence acknowledged. And there, at the far end, stood the king. He was exactly as she remembered. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair swept back from a face carved from granite and grief. The scar beneath his left ear. The exhaustion that lingered in his green eyes despite his composed expression. But something was different. He was looking at her. Not through her. Not past her. At her. His gaze fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Corenza stopped 10 feet from the throne and lowered her head. "Your Majesty." Silence stretched, then footsteps, coming closer. "Look at me." His voice was rougher than she remembered. Lower. She had only heard it from a distance before, giving orders to advisors, never directed at her. Corenza raised her head. The king stood 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he studied her like she was a puzzle he had failed to solve. "You cleaned my throne room," he said. "Every morning. For 2 years." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And I never once looked at you." It was not a question, it was a confession, and the weight of it sat between them like a living thing. "You were busy," Corenza said quietly. "Kings do not notice servants." "I noticed your absence." The words landed in her chest and stayed there. "The room felt wrong," Aldrich continued. "Empty, even when it was clean. I did not understand why until a child showed me a drawing. Tanzy." Corenza's throat constricted. "Is she?" "She is safe. She is fed. She has a bed." A pause. "She misses you." Corenza's vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. "Not here. Not in front of him." "Why was I brought back, Your Majesty?" "Because you were sent away under false pretense. Because a child who lost everything was losing you too, and because—" He stopped. His jaw worked. "Because?" Corenza prompted, too tired to guard her tongue. Aldrich's eyes met hers, green and deep and holding something she could not name. "Because I wanted to see your face," he said quietly. "The face I never looked at. I wanted to know what I had been blind to." Corenza did not know what to say, did not know how to hold the weight of a king's attention after 2 years of invisibility. "And now that you have seen it?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. His gaze moved across her features slowly, deliberately, as if memorizing her. "Now," he said finally, "I understand why my aunt wanted you gone." Before Corenza could ask what that meant, a door opened behind her. "Your Majesty." Lady Morvaine's voice, sharp as broken glass. "I see the servant has been recovered. Shall I return her to her duties?" Aldrich did not look at his aunt. His eyes stayed on Corenza. "She will not be returning to servant duties," he said. "She will serve as Tanzy's guardian, officially, with quarters in the East Wing and wages befitting the position." The silence that followed was suffocating. Corenza felt Morvaine's gaze on her back. Cold, calculating, dangerous. "As you wish, Your Majesty," Morvaine said smoothly, "though I might remind you that emotional attachments to staff can be complicated." "I did not ask for counsel." Aldrich's voice hardened. "You are dismissed." Footsteps retreated. A door closed. Corenza exhaled shakily. "You just made an enemy for me," she said without thinking. "She was already your enemy." Aldrich studied her. "The question is why?" He stepped back. The moment fractured. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow you will see Tanzy." He paused at the door. "And Corenza." She looked up. "I will not fail to see you again." He left. Corenza stood alone in the great hall, her heart pounding, her mind spinning. The king had looked at her, had spoken to her, had said her name like it mattered. And Lady Morvaine had watched it happen with murder in her eyes. 3 weeks passed. Aldrich told himself he was simply ensuring the child's welfare, That his frequent visits to the East Wing had nothing to do with the woman who now occupied the chambers beside Tanzy's. That his awareness of Corenza's movements throughout the castle was merely the vigilance of a king protecting those under his roof. He was lying. He knew he was lying. But the lie was easier than the truth. The truth was that he had spent 2 years walking past someone who mattered and had only discovered it after she was gone. The truth was that her absence had carved a hollow in his chest that her presence now filled too quickly, too completely. The truth was that he was beginning to need her, and Aldrich had been taught since childhood that needing anyone was the most dangerous weakness of all. But watching her with Tanzy made the lessons feel thin. She was teaching the child to read. Not drawing letters in flour anymore, but proper lessons with parchment and ink. Tanzy's small face scrunched in concentration, tongue poking out, while Corenza guided her hand. "Gently," Corenza murmured. "The letters do not need to be beaten into submission." Tanzy grinned and wrote slower. Aldrich watched from the doorway. He had not announced himself. He rarely did anymore. He simply appeared, drawn by something he refused to examine, and stood in the margins of their small world. Corenza looked up. Their eyes met. She did not startle the way she had those first days. Now she simply acknowledged him with a small nod and returned her attention to Tanzy. "Your Majesty is lurking again," she said mildly. "Kings do not lurk." "Then what do kings call standing in doorways watching people?" "Observation." Tanzy looked up and beamed at him. Her hands flew in the signs Corenza had been teaching her. Signs Aldrich had been secretly learning. "You came back." "I did," he said. "Corenza says you have too many meetings." "Corenza is correct. She says you do not eat enough either." Aldrich glanced at Corenza. She was very focused on organizing the parchment. "Does she?" Corenza's cheeks flushed faintly. "Children exaggerate. Tanzy does not speak. How can she exaggerate? Her hands are very dramatic." Tanzy's hands were already moving again. "She worries about you." Corenza reached over and gently trapped the child's fingers. "That is enough tattling for one morning." But Aldrich had seen it. The truth Tanzy had offered freely, without understanding its weight. "She worries about you." Something inside him settled a little more. That evening, Aldrich sat in his private study reviewing trade agreements when the first tremor hit. It started in his hands. A faint shake, barely perceptible. He set down his quill and pressed his palms flat against the desk. Not now. The tremor spread. Up his arms. Into his chest. His vision flickered at the edges, darkening, then returning. This had happened before. Many times since childhood. Morvain called them episodes. Weakness in the bloodline. She had always been there with the tonic, the bitter medicine that made the world stop tilting. But Morvain was not here now. Aldrich gripped the desk, breathed through his teeth. The darkness crept closer. His heartbeat turned erratic. Too fast, then too slow, then too fast again. He heard his own voice, rough and strained. "Guard." No answer. The study was soundproofed. No one could hear him. His legs buckled. He caught himself on the desk's edge, but his arms were shaking too violently to hold. He slid to the floor. The cold stone pressed against his cheek. The darkness closed in. Not like this, he thought. Not alone. But he had always been alone. That was the price of power. That was what Morvain had taught him. Kings stand alone. Footsteps, distant, then closer. Aldrich. Corenza's voice. Corenza's hands on his face, warm against his cold skin. "What is happening? What do I do?" He could not answer. His jaw was locked. His body was no longer his own. "Stay with me," she said. "Stay right here." She pulled his head into her lap. Her fingers moved through his hair, steady and sure, anchoring him to something real while the darkness tried to swallow him whole. "I have you," she whispered. "I have you." The tremors peaked. Every muscle in his body seized. He heard a sound, realized it came from his own throat, a broken thing he could not control. And then slowly, impossibly, it began to fade. The darkness retreated. His heartbeat steadied, his body unclenched, muscle by muscle. Aldrich lay on the cold floor with his head in Corenza's lap, staring at the ceiling, breathing like a man who had nearly drowned. "What was that?" Corenza asked. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled against his temples. "Weakness," he said. The word tasted like poison. "In my bloodline, Morvain has treated it since I was a child." "Treated it how?" "A tonic. She prepares it herself." Corenza was quiet. Too quiet. Aldrich turned his head slightly to look at her. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." She smoothed his hair back. "Rest now." But her eyes said something else, and Aldrich, despite his exhaustion, despite the fog still clinging to his mind, saw it clearly. She did not believe him. Corenza waited until midnight. The castle was silent. Guards walked their rounds, predictable as clockwork. She had learned their patterns during 2 years of early mornings. She knew which corridors emptied and when. She moved through the shadows toward Lady Morvain's chambers. The tonic. That was what she needed to see. Something about Aldrich's episode had set her instincts screaming. The way it had come on suddenly. The way his body had fought itself. The way he had spoken of it like a shameful secret he had carried his entire life. Weakness in the bloodline. She had seen weak bloodlines. She had grown up among common folk who suffered every ailment poverty could offer. What she had witnessed tonight was not natural weakness. It looked like poison. Morvain's private study lay within her chambers, accessible through a small antechamber. The outer door was locked. Corenza had expected that. But locks were only obstacles if you lacked patience, and 2 years of invisibility had taught her patience better than any master. She found the window, found the latch that had never been properly secured, found herself inside within minutes. The room smelled of dried herbs and something sharper. Metallic. Wrong. Corenza moved to the workbench against the far wall. Bottles lined the shelves. Dried plants hung from hooks. Mortars and pestles sat in neat rows, residue still clinging to their edges. She did not know poisons, but she knew what did not belong. One bottle stood apart from the others. Dark glass. No label. Sealed with wax that had been broken and resealed many times. She lifted it carefully, removed the stopper, brought it to her nose. Bitter. Acrid. Nothing that should be in medicine. Footsteps in the corridor. Corenza froze. The footsteps passed. She waited, heart hammering against her ribs until silence returned. She replaced the bottle exactly where she had found it and slipped back out the window. The next 3 days were agony. She could not confront Morvain without proof. She could not tell Aldrich without sounding like a madwoman. She watched him take the tonic his aunt brought him every morning and wanted to scream. But she gathered evidence instead. She noted when the episodes occurred. Always after Aldrich defied Morvain in some way. Always after he showed Corenza kindness or attention. She noted the tonic's timing. Morvain always delivered it personally. Always watched him drink it. Always left with a small, satisfied smile. She noted the symptoms. Tremors. Darkness at the edges of vision. Loss of bodily control. Shame. These were not weakness. These were responses to something external. On the 4th night, she went to Aldrich's study. He was awake, staring into the fire. He looked exhausted. The hollows beneath his cheekbones had deepened. "You should be sleeping," Corenza said from the doorway. "So should you." "I am not the one having episodes." He flinched. Barely, but she saw it. "I came to ask you something," she said, stepping inside. "About your condition." There is nothing to ask. It is what it is. When did it start? Aldrich's jaw tightened. Childhood. I was 7. What happened when you were 7? Silence. The fire crackled. My mother died, he said finally. Morvain took over my care. The episodes began shortly after. Corenza felt the pieces clicking together. Cold. Horrible. Certain. Did they happen before your mother died? No. His voice was rough. But I was young. Perhaps I simply do not remember. Or perhaps they did not exist before. Aldrich looked at her sharply. What are you implying? Corenza crossed the room, knelt before his chair, looked up into those green eyes that had finally learned to see her. I am not implying anything, she said softly. I am asking you to consider a possibility. What if the weakness is not in your blood? What if it was put there? His face went pale. You are accusing my aunt of... I am asking you to consider. She raised me. She has protected me my entire life. She has controlled you your entire life. Corenza's voice did not waver. Every time you defy her, you have an episode. Every time you show independence, you fall. And every time you fall, she is there with the cure. Aldrich stared at her. His breathing had changed. Shallow. Rapid. You do not know what you are saying. I know what I saw in her study. The words landed like a blade. What? The tonic. I found it. I smelled it. It is not medicine, Aldrich. It is poison. He shot to his feet. The chair scraped back. You broke into her chambers? Yes. That is treason. Then punish me, but listen first. He paced. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back. His hands trembled, and Corenza did not know if it was rage or fear or the beginning of another episode. She is my family, he said. The only family I have left. She is the reason you believe you are broken. Corenza rose. She is the reason you think you need her. She created the disease so she could be the cure. Aldrich stopped pacing. His back was to her. His shoulders rose and fell with harsh breaths. If what you say is true, he said, then my entire life has been a lie. Not your entire life, just the parts she controlled. He turned. His eyes were bright, wet. Why do you care? The question was raw. You owe me nothing. I ignored you for 2 years. Why would you risk yourself to save me? Corenza looked at him. At this man who had been poisoned and manipulated and taught that needing anyone was weakness. At this man who had finally seen her and had not looked away since. Because Tanzy loves you, she said. Because you are becoming something your aunt never wanted you to be. And because... She stopped. Because? His voice was barely a whisper. Because I see you now. The real you. And I will not let anyone take that away. The silence between them was deafening. Aldrich stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Close enough that if she reached out, she could touch him. He lifted his hand, hesitated, then brushed his fingers against her cheek, so gently she barely felt it. Corenza, he breathed. A sound at the door. They both turned. Tanzy stood in the doorway. Her small face was sheet white. Her eyes were fixed on Aldrich with an expression of pure devastation. She had heard everything. Corenza's stomach plummeted. Tanzy. But the child was already running, disappearing into the dark corridor, silent as always, but leaving something shattered in her wake. Tanzy ran until her legs burned. She did not know where she was going, only that she needed to move, needed to outrun the words she had heard through the crack in the study door. She is the reason you believe you are broken. She created the disease so she could be the cure. Lady Morvain, the tall woman with the cold smile who brought Aldrich his medicine every morning. Who had always been there? Who had raised him? Tanzy did not understand all of it, but she understood enough. Someone was hurting Aldrich. Someone was making him sick on purpose, and that someone was the most powerful person in the castle besides him. Her chest heaved. She pressed herself into the alcove beneath the East Tower stairs, the same place Aldrich had found her crying all those weeks ago. She was crying again now. Everything had been getting better. Corenza was back. Aldrich smiled sometimes. They ate meals together. They felt like a family. Like the family Tanzy had never had. And now it was all going to shatter. Because Tanzy knew what happened to people who discovered dangerous secrets. She had seen it in the servants' quarters. A maid who knew too much about a visiting lord disappeared one night and never returned. Corenza had discovered something dangerous. Corenza was going to disappear. Tanzy pressed her fist against her mouth to muffle the sobs. Child. The voice was soft, gentle, wrong. Tanzy looked up. Lady Morvain stood at the alcove's entrance, but she was not wearing her usual cold expression. Her face was open, concerned, almost maternal. I heard you running, Morvain said quietly. I heard you crying. What has happened? Tanzy shook her head frantically. She could not speak, could not sign, could not do anything but stare at the woman Corenza had accused. Morvain crouched slowly, bringing herself to Tanzy's level. You heard something, she said. Not a question. Something that frightened you. Tanzy's breath caught. I understand, Morvain continued. That woman has been filling the king's head with lies. Terrible lies. She wants to turn him against me. Tanzy's hands began to move before she could stop them. Why? Morvain's expression flickered. Triumph, quickly hidden. Because she wants him for herself. Morvain's voice dropped to a whisper. She sees an opportunity. A lonely king. A position of power. She will say anything to remove those who stand in her way. Tanzy shook her head again. That was not right. Corenza was not like that. You love her, Morvain said gently. Of course you do. She has been kind to you. But I have known Aldrich since he was born. I held him when his mother died. I have protected him his entire life. She reached out and touched Tanzy's cheek with cold fingers. And now that woman is trying to destroy everything I have built, everything that keeps him safe. She said you were hurting him, Tanzy signed, her hands trembling. Morvain's eyes hardened for just a fraction of a second, then softened again. Of course she said that. It is what liars do. They accuse others of their own crimes. Tanzy's mind spun. She did not know who to believe. Corenza had never lied to her. But Morvain was family. Morvain had been here forever. There is something you should see, Morvain said. Proof that I am telling the truth. Proof that Corenza is the dangerous one. Tanzy hesitated. It is in my study. Just a few documents. Letters she sent before she came to this castle. Morvain rose, extending her hand. Come with me, and I will show you. Then you can decide for yourself. Tanzy looked at the offered hand. She thought about Corenza teaching her to read, braiding her hair, holding her during storms. She thought about Aldrich kneeling in this very alcove, looking at her like she mattered. She thought about the family she had almost had, and she took Morvain's hand. The study was dark. One candle burning on the desk. Tanzy stepped inside, and the door closed behind her with a sound that felt too final. Morvain did not move to the desk, did not retrieve any documents. She simply stood between Tanzy and the door, her expression shifting. The warmth evaporated. Foolish child, Morvain said quietly. Did you truly think I would not hear you in the corridor? Did you think I would let a mute orphan destroy 20 years of careful work? Tanzy's blood turned to ice. She backed away. Her spine hit the workbench. Bottles rattled behind her. You know too much now, Morvain continued, advancing slowly. You heard things you should not have heard, And you will tell them. Perhaps not with your voice, but with those clever hands of yours. Tanzy's hands flew up. I will not tell anyone, I promise. Promises from children mean nothing. Morvain reached behind her and produced a small vial of dark glass, the liquid inside sharp and acrid. This is faster than the tonic I give Aldrich. Faster and cleaner. You will simply go to sleep. And by morning, everyone will believe you wandered into the cold and never returned. Tanzy's legs buckled. She slid down against the workbench, shaking her head over and over. Please, please, I will not say anything. No, Morvain agreed softly. You will not. She stepped closer. Tanzy opened her mouth in a silent scream, her throat straining, because it was the only thing left to do. Corenza, she thought. Aldrich. Someone. Please. She did not know that Corenza had already discovered her empty bed. Did not know that Aldrich had caught Morvain's scent trailing toward the east wing. Did not know they were already running. Morvain crouched before her, unstoppering the vial. Hold still, child. It will only hurt for a moment. The door exploded inward, but it was not a man who burst through. It was a wolf, massive, black as midnight, eyes blazing with fury. The beast cleared the doorway in a single bound, slamming into Morvain and sending her crashing against the far wall. The vial shattered on the stone floor. Morvain scrambled to her feet, but the wolf was already between her and Tanzy, hackles raised, a growl rumbling from its chest like distant thunder. Tanzy stared. She had heard the stories. Alpha wolves could shift, could become beasts as large as horses, and could tear a man apart with a single swipe. But she had never seen it. She had never seen Aldrich like this. You would attack your own blood? Morvain's voice was steady, but her face had gone white. For a servant and an orphan? The wolf snarled. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Corenza appeared in the doorway, guards behind her. Tanzy! Corenza rushed forward, dropping to her knees and pulling the child into her arms. Are you hurt? Did she? Tanzy shook her head, clinging to Corenza's neck. The wolf had not moved, had not taken its eyes off Morvain. Guards! Corenza called, her voice controlled despite the tremor beneath it. Seize her. They did. Morvain was restrained within seconds, her arms wrenched behind her back. This is treason, she shrieked. I am the king's family. I am... You are a poisoner and a murderer, Corenza cut her off. You have been drugging your own nephew for 20 years. You just tried to kill a child. Take her to the cells. Morvain's eyes found the wolf, found Tanzy, found Corenza. He will fall apart without me, she hissed. He is weak. He has always been weak. You will see. You will all see. The guards dragged her away. Silence fell. The wolf's form shimmered. Bones shifted. Fur receded. And then Aldrich was there, human again, breathing hard, wearing nothing but the loose trousers he must have barely managed to pull on before shifting. He dropped to his knees in front of Tanzy. Are you hurt? Tanzy shook her head, her hands lifted, trembling. You came. I will always come. His voice cracked. Always. She launched herself at him. His arms came around her, holding tight, and Corenza wrapped herself around both of them, the three of them tangled together on the cold stone floor. I have you, Aldrich whispered. Both of you. I have you. Aldrich did not sleep for 3 days. Not because of the poison, which had long since begun to leave his system, but because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Morvain crouched before Tanzy with that vial in her hand. Corenza found him in the throne room on the 4th morning. He was sitting on the steps below the obsidian throne, not on it. His head was bowed. His hands hung between his knees. He looked nothing like a king. He looked like a man who had nearly lost everything. You need to sleep, Corenza said. I know. You need to eat. I know that too. She crossed the room and sat beside him on the steps. close enough that their shoulders touched. She is safe, Corenza said quietly. Tanzy is safe. You made sure of that. I almost did not. His voice was hollow. If you had not realized she was missing, if I had not caught Morvain's scent, if I had been 1 minute slower. You were not. But I could have been. Corenza was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and took his hand. When I was cleaning this room, she said, I used to watch you. Every morning. You never knew I was there. But I was. And I saw things. He turned his head slightly, listening. I saw a man who carried the weight of a kingdom without complaint, a man who read every report, heard every petition, made every decision. A man who was so busy keeping everyone else alive that he forgot to live himself. She squeezed his hand. You are not weak, Aldrich. You have never been weak. You were fighting a battle no one could see, against an enemy who wore a friendly face. And you survived. He was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, she raised me. She held me when my mother died. I thought she loved me. Perhaps she did. In her own broken way, but love that controls is not love, it is possession. He exhaled slowly. His fingers tightened around hers. I do not know who I am without her. Then find out. Corenza met his eyes. You have time now. You have freedom. And you have people who will stand beside you while you figure it out. People? Tanzy. Mara. The guards who arrested her without hesitation. A pause. Me. Something shifted in his expression. The exhaustion remained, but beneath it, something warmer kindled. You, he repeated, if you want me. Corenza. He turned to face her fully. I have wanted you since the morning I realized you were gone. I have wanted you since I learned your name. I have wanted you since you knelt before me and told me the truth when anyone else would have stayed silent. He lifted their joined hands and pressed his lips to her knuckles. The question has never been whether I want you. The question is whether you could ever want a man as broken as I am. You are not broken. I have been poisoned for 20 years. I do not know which parts of me are real. Then let me help you find out. Corenza cupped his face with her free hand. You are not your aunt's creation. You are not the weakness she invented. You are the man who knelt for a crying child. The man who sent riders across the kingdom to find a servant. The man who threw himself between a monster and a little girl. She leaned closer. Their foreheads touched. That is who you are. And that is who I want. He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was desperate and raw and full of every unspoken thing that had built between them over weeks of watching and wanting and refusing to name what they felt. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Stay, he said, not as Tanzy's guardian, not as anything official. Just stay. Where else would I go? I am serious, Corenza. So am I. She smiled. You could not chase me away now if you tried. The tension in his shoulders finally eased. Something close to a laugh escaped him. Good, he said. Because I am done being blind, and I am never letting you out of my sight again. 6 months later, Corenza stood on the balcony of the royal apartments and watched the sun rise over Cindervale. The castle looked different in morning light now. Not cold and imposing, but golden. Warm. Alive. Behind her, she heard the door open. Small footsteps, then larger ones. Tanzy appeared at her side, already dressed in the fine gown she had initially refused to wear and now never took off. Her hair was braided neatly, ribbons threaded through, exactly the way Corenza had taught her. Good morning, Tanzy signed. Good morning, little one. Papa says breakfast is ready. Corenza's heart still stuttered every time Tanzy used that word. Papa. Aldrich had cried the first time she signed it. Actually cried. The most powerful Alpha King in the Northern Territories. brought to tears by a 7-year-old's hands. Then we should not keep Papa waiting. Tanzy grinned and ran back inside. Corenza turned to follow and found Aldrich standing in the doorway. He looked different these days. The shadows beneath his eyes had faded. His shoulders no longer carried the weight of invisible chains. He smiled more, laughed more, slept through the night without tremors. The healers had confirmed what Corenza had suspected. The episodes had stopped completely once he stopped taking Morvaine's tonic. 20 years of poison, purged from his system in a matter of months. 20 years of believing he was broken, undone by the truth. Morvaine was in the dungeons now, awaiting trial. She would spend the rest of her life there. Aldrich had been clear about that. No execution, because that would be too quick. Just decades of cold stone and silence, the same isolation she had tried to impose on everyone else. "You are staring," Aldrich said. "I am observing." "Is that so?" "Kings observe, apparently." He laughed. That sound she had first heard when Tanzy made him smile, that sound she had been collecting ever since. He crossed the balcony and pulled her into his arms. "Tanzy has informed me," he said against her hair, "that breakfast is ready and that if we do not hurry, she will eat all the pastries herself." A credible threat. Very credible. He pulled back slightly, looking down at her. "She has also informed me that it is ridiculous that we have not gotten married yet." Corenza raised an eyebrow. "Has she?" Her exact words were. He lifted his hands, mimicking Tanzy's signs. "Stop being ridiculous. Just marry her." Corenza laughed. "She has a point," Aldrich said. His voice softened. 6 months of courting, flowers every week, 3 truly terrible poems that I made you promise never to share. 4. You forgot the one about my eyes. I blocked that one from memory. Wise. He cupped her face in his hands, those hands that had once gripped a throne in white-knuckled isolation. Those hands that now held her like she was precious. "Marry me," he said, "not because it is expected, not because it is political, but because I cannot imagine waking up to any face but yours. Because Tanzy was right all along. We are already a family. We might as well make it official." Corenza looked at him. At this man who had been blind and was learning to see. At this man who had been broken and was choosing to heal. At this man who had watched her clean his throne room for 2 years and now could not stop watching her for an entirely different reason. "Yes," she said. His face broke into something incandescent. "Yes? Yes, but only if Tanzy can throw the flowers. She will insist on it. Then we have a deal." He kissed her, slow and thorough and full of promise. From inside the apartment, Tanzy's hands clapped together in rapid, delighted applause, her way of making the joy she could not voice heard. They broke apart, laughing. Corenza took Aldrich's hand. He took hers. Together, they walked inside to join their daughter for breakfast. The throne room would be cleaned by someone else now. But every morning, when the first light touched the obsidian throne, Aldrich would remember the girl who had arrived before dawn, the ghost he had failed to see, the woman who had saved him simply by being real, and he would never stop being grateful that she had stayed.